Welcome to the Sober Nation FM podcast, where we're putting recovery on the map. I'm your host, Jonathan Sylvester. This show is brought to you by Sobriety Engine. Do you want to take your recovery to the next level? Do you want more support, community, and fellowship? Sobriety Engine is an incredible community of men and women supporting each other in their recovery. You can get a ton of great tips, resources, and guidance to help you succeed in recovery and in life. Visit sobrietyengine.com to join today. Sober Nation FM is also brought to you by Recover Health. If you're ready to get fit and start living a healthier lifestyle, all while supporting your sobriety, then you can learn more about having me as your own personal fitness and nutrition coach at rcvrhealth.com. And whether you're listening to the show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or watching on YouTube, please share this with your friends. Follow, subscribe, and leave a review. Nation, let's hop right into today's episode. Today, I'll be speaking with actor Hick Cheramie. Thanks for joining me on the show, Hick.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm humbled and honored. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show. And I want to jump right into things as usual. And I'd really like to start out here by hearing a little bit about what things were like before you got sober and how you actually found your way into recovery. Would you mind sharing that with us?
No, not at all. Things before I got sober were, obviously they rough. You know, everyone has their story, and I don't like to really go, too far into war stories.
Sure.
But I was just not a good person, and in that time, no one ever teaches us how to, at least I wasn't. I might have missed that day when they taught it in school or when they taught it in religion class or wherever, how to love ourselves. And I think that was one of the roots of the destructive behavior and path that I took when I was actively using alcohol and drugs. I grew up in an environment where addiction was very present with my family, and I even at that time I wasn't aware of really what addiction was. But as I got older, I kind of knew what was going on around me, and knowing what addiction was doing and what it did in my family. For some reason, I still took that path. So for many years of my life, I was a very selfish, self-destructive person with and people would tell me this all the time, and it still kind of trips me out. You hear that, and it became like almost cliche. You have so much potential. You have so much potential.
Yeah.
And I was lucky enough that there was people who seen things in me that I didn't see in myself, and those people I cherish, to this day. But there was nothing glamorous about my life, in addiction. The story I told myself it was, but in reality it was totally not. If you think sipping out of a bottle of vodka and throwing it back up into the bottle and then drinking it back because you don't want to waste it is glamorous, then you obviously have some issues, which I had, obviously.
Yeah.
I hurt a lot of people, and I caused a lot of damage, and that's never okay. But I was lucky enough to one day hit, and people talk about these rock bottoms,
right?
And everyone has their different form of bottom, and for my bottom was after 20 plus years of addiction with drugs and alcohol, was me sitting in a garage with a house and a job, drinking vodka at like 8 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
Called in sick to work on a Monday. And, something in my life led me up to that point. This path of destruction that I had going on led me up to that point. And, I think about the bad situations that I was in when I was using and drinking and doing drugs. There was times where I was homeless, and there was times where I was sleeping outdoors, and there was times. And that morning, for some reason, on December 14th, 2014, I was the most loneliest I'd ever been in my life. And I still can't to this day tell you why at that moment that I felt such brokenness and hopelessness. And I had felt it for a long time, but for some reason that morning, it really hit me. And I started to really self-review my life and what had happened in my life. I had a decent childhood, but things were rough. My mom left at an early age. She was a drug addict. She lost her fight in 2012 with drug addiction. And my dad kind of raised us on his own. And I think he did the best he could. He was a very, resilient man, but he did the best he could. And, I went on to school and just never felt, and to this day, I still don't feel normal. But, I never felt just comfortable with myself. I started getting into a lot of, drugs and drinking at an early age. I think at 5 years old, I was begging my mother for codeine for this procedure I had. And I recently spoke about it in an interview because I didn't realize what was kind of going on until after I got sober and I spoke to my mom. But what happened was I had a procedure and I was going through a bottle of liquid codeine. And when I ran out, I got really upset. Like through a tantrum, and until she went back to the doctor and got me more. And when she told me that, it hit me and made me wonder at such a young age, for some reason, why I got ease and comfort from that. Why that made me feel okay. And I don't remember too many years after that, but I remember like taking my first drink in like the 5th grade. I was at a Mardi Gras parade, and we had all these parents. They were all on these floats, right, getting ready to roll out for this parade, right? And so the kids and us, we went walk and by the floats, try to get free beads. And there was a lot of my friends' parents that were actually on the floats, and they were basically handing us like cups of jungle juice, man. Like they were, I'm in the 5th grade.
Wow. Yeah.
And I had to be very careful because my father was a recovering alcoholic, and he got sober in 1986. But he never followed any kind of program. He stayed kind of dry for a long time. He's older now and he's an old hippie and he's more chilled out now. But so I had to kind of like hide that from him. And I went on like, and it's sad to say most kids in the United States here that, go on to high school and smoke pot and do ecstasy and, cocaine, whatever their thing is. And I did that for a long time. I did that for many years, and it ruined a lot of opportunities for me, and put me in some very unfortunate situations, and put a lot of other people in unfortunate situations. Because I just wasn't. I never look at myself as just being a drug addict or an alcoholic. I was a thief of many things when I was actively using. Not only material things, but a lot of nights of sleep I took from people. A lot of happiness and joy that I took from people. And and I still get goosebumps talking about this type of thing, because when you think about it, it takes a pretty selfish person to actively knowing that they've taken these things from another human being. And I'm grateful I can see that now, almost 6 years later, what kind of harm I was exactly doing. And I was pretty lucky that I've had some really good amends in the past 5+ years.
And that's awesome.
Some really accepting people, not everyone, but the majority was just truly, genuinely happy for me. And it kind of chokes me up a little bit when I get to that part, because, those people stuck around and believed in me for that long. To the point that when I did get better, that I was able to make things right with them.
That's really incredible, man. That's awesome. Yeah. And I can relate so much, and I'm sure our listeners can. I really just, first off, I appreciate you just saying that you didn't want to go too much into the war stories. I think we do a pretty good job of sharing people's stories while focusing on the solution as much as possible, and not the problem. And you described this pretty well, your path and your journey and this progression through addiction. you described a little bit like the day that you got sober and just this moment that you got to, but leading up to that, were you starting to see, I mean, cause man, you started at a young age, but like, when did you start to see like, maybe this is an issue? Like maybe this is.
Man, so I did a lot of like, hard drugs for a long time, and I knew that was an issue.
Okay.
Because it's obviously it's an issue.
Mm-hmm.
I think that it really didn't, hit me that it was like, look, bro, you have a real problem. Was when I started drinking, because I did drugs for a long time and I wasn't really a big drinker. And what happened is I got off the prescription medication cold turkey in 2011, and I remember being dope sick for days and days and days on end. Like I'm like a month, and I still wasn't feeling right, and I still wanted to use.
Yeah.
And I woke up one morning and I went buy a 12-pack of beer. And I hate beer, but I drank that whole 12-pack and I felt okay again.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, maybe, just maybe, since I'm a Cajun and I live in South Louisiana and everyone drinks, like this is my solution. Right? Like I can, like I have to hide crushing Roxy's in the bathroom or shooting up dope, but this I can really like walk around in public with and like drinking and it'd be sociably acceptable.
Yeah, no big deal.
Yeah, so I had that 12-pack, and after that 12-pack I had many more, and then I moved on to wino liquor, and then I moved on to vodka. But when I tried to stop drinking was when I realized that I couldn't. Then I realized there was a real problem. And at that point, Jonathan, I knew what I was.
Okay.
People tell us all the time what we are.
For sure, yeah.
Like we don't know. But when I'd wake up in the morning and when I could look at myself in the mirror, I knew exactly what I was.
Yeah.
I was a liar. I was a selfish, self-centered asshole. I was an alcoholic. I was a drug addict, and there was nothing whole about me. And so I don't know if that's what you were kind of looking for.
Yeah.
But that's kind of what led it up. And there was thousands of moments that have shown me that it was a problem. There was plenty moments when I would get kicked out of a bar, or be disruptive, or get a DUI, or get there's all these things that we kind of just write them off because it's just like, this is who I am and this is what I do. And I hate, one of the biggest things that really gets me, and it was one of my biggest things that I would always say was, well, this is who I am. And this is what I know. And it's bullshit.
Yeah.
Because we are capable of change, and we are capable of having a better day than we did yesterday. And we are capable of waking up in the morning and having that choice of being a victim or to be our own fucking hero. And I choose to be my own fucking hero now, like every day. Right. And, that's what kind of like led me to that point of just lying to myself so much every day. And that morning that I talk about where I was sitting in the garage drinking,
right.
I remember sitting there, and I remember just crying and feeling so alone. And I walked into my living area, and it was close to Christmas, and I always Christmas gifts for my two children. And they were coming that weekend, and I was all excited that they were coming. And I just couldn't get this feeling of how sick I was. Like I had kind of admitted that I'm a very sick person. And, I kind of started to bargain with my higher power, what I choose to call God. Like I need help, and, but I can't do this now because Christmas next week, and there's all these presents, and I got to my knees and I was crying, and some phenomenon happened that day, and I still can't explain it. That something said to me, like, you won't be here next Christmas.
Wow.
So like, if you like do something now, and I picked up a phone and I said, and still to this day, you know, it'll probably be the most 3 important words that I've ever said in my life was I need help.
Hmm.
Because, you know, pride and ego and having to be in control has stopped me from doing that for so long, right? It crippled me. And from that moment, things started happening in my life. From that very moment where I got off my knees from crying, and things started happening in my life where, you know, phone calls were made and things were done, and something in this universe was saying, you know what, he's worth it. He's of worth and value, not only to himself but to others. And you know, I was blessed, you know, by the next day to be where I needed to be, and start learning the tools that I needed to learn to live life on life's terms, with a great support system. And, you know, I learned a lot about myself.
Hmm.
I learned a lot about how to love myself. And I learned a lot about, you know, after, right in the beginning, after I got sober, I learned that, and I try to teach this to my children constantly, is that my walk, I could say all the shit I want. You could talk here and I could say it, but my walk ultimately is everything, man.
Yeah.
Because people watch,
100%.
you know, and my walk is everything. But yeah, it's been quite a journey. I've been really blessed to come this far from it, because there's days where I find myself. I was filming a movie not too long ago. I'm sitting in this trailer, and it was like the first time I got my own trailer, and I just started like, they're like, you got 15 minutes. Wardrobe's gonna come in and do that, and I just started crying because, you know, I'm like, I'm not supposed to be here.
Wow.
You know, like, how
Yeah.
fortunate to be here. And it's not just that, you know, it's every morning when I wake up, it's getting to hug my children and feel them reciprocate. You know, it's not just the cool big things that happen to me. It's like every fucking little miracle that happens to me throughout the day that I hadn't felt before in my life.
Yeah.
That I wasn't able to feel or recognize, I should say.
That's so cool, man. That's awesome. Yeah. And so much of your story I can relate to. I mean, I think number one, just, you know, thinking back to how you said you started drinking, you know, when the drugs weren't around. Man, same thing. And even when I got sober, I had a hard time saying that I even had any issues with alcohol. But when I had a few days of like real sobriety, it didn't take long to realize, like, wow, no, there was like when the drugs weren't around, like I was, because like you said, I was dope sick, you know, and I was just trying to like mask that feeling. And that's where the alcohol, you know, really started to come into the picture for me. And this moment that you describe, this, you know, what a lot of people would refer to as a spiritual experience, for sure. I mean, what you just described to me, that's how I understand it. Man, what an incredibly emotional moment, for sure. So this happens. You reach out to for help, and do you go to treatment, or what kind of happens after that?
Yeah, I was lucky enough to go to a great place that actually Chris Herron, the Celtics basketball player,
Yeah,
uh,
yeah,
he owns, I think, part of it. Or and it's kind of crazy because uh, when I was, we are just talking about being dope sick. When I was dope sick, his 30 for 30 came on.
oh my God,
I
yeah,
had never watched
it's
it,
incredible.
and it broke me. You know, you would think that being dope sick, you're not able to feel real emotion. Man,
Mm,
it floored me,
I
and it
bet.
stuck with me. I mean, it really stuck with me. If I ever get the chance to meet the guy, like, I'll thank him for that, because
Hmm.
it just stuck with me. And then I ended up at a treatment center that he owned.
Okay.
So I ended up in a treatment center, and then I did, while I was in treatment, I made a choice not to speak to anyone
Hmm.
except at the time my fiance. She was kind of my messenger for people who wanted to know about me. And it was tough because I went in right before Christmas and I spent Christmas and New Year's there, because when I was
Wow.
in here, on my knees, I was still trying to bargain. I'm gonna go after New Year's. I
Right.
wasn't gonna New Year's, and I wasn't gonna
Yeah.
go after Christmas, So
No.
like that was it. That was the moment. That was the time. That was my time.
Mhm.
And while I was in treatment, it was tough because my kids were young and I was very close to my children and I didn't talk to them at all. And I knew that I had to focus on me. And I knew that I couldn't have any other influence because I'm a drug addict and alcoholic. I'm a junkie. I'm easily influenced by anything and I can manifest anything and manipulate anything. So I figured it would be best if I worked on me and me only with other sick people around me and
Yeah.
people who are trained and educated to deal with people like myself. And so I did 35 days in there, and I had been to many treatment centers before. When I got off
Okay.
the heroin, when I got off of heroin, I spent 3 months in a treatment center and a halfway house. So, I had been there, but there was something different this time. I wanted it, man.
Yeah.
And people contact me and they're like, I have this family member and this family member and this family. And I think one of the, hardest things for me to tell them is like, after we offer them a way to get this solution and they deny it and they're like, what do we do? Like I have some magic bean, you set up some healthy boundaries and pray for them. So I did treatment. I got out 35 days later, and getting out was probably the most scariest moment of my life because I had never really faced life on life's terms without some mood altering substance.
Yeah.
And when I got out of there, I was lucky to have a job. I have a really good job. I'm an oil field worker and work for a wonderful company, and they're very family type business. And they seen something in me that I didn't see in myself, obviously, because before I went to treatment, I called them up and they were very accepting of me getting the help I need. And I came back and I went to work, and I was suggested to make 90 meetings in 90 days, and I made 4 to 5 meetings every week for 3 years because I'm an overachiever and I'm an alcoholic and a junkie. I can't get enough of something, right?
Yeah.
And that's the route that I took. And I've met some amazing people in those rooms, and I've met some amazing mentors, and I was able to mentor other people. And from there, my life just completely changed. You live a certain way for 36 years, and then all of a sudden you realize that there's this world out there, and there's this life, and there's this thing called joy, and there's this thing called naturally going to sleep. It's crazy because I felt like an infant having to learn things that my peers, some of my peers have been doing for years.
Yeah.
That I wasn't.
The basics.
The basics. I'd wake up in the morning, and the first thing I would do was a pill or a drink because I couldn't. Burroughs, I'm a big Beat Generation reader, and in Burroughs' Junkie, he writes that he needed dope to shave. Like he couldn't even wake up in the morning, and that was kind of his thing of saying like you can't get up and function without it.
Yeah.
And he was so right, even though it was written back in the 30s or 40s, but he was so right because I didn't know how to live without it. And today I can honestly say that I wouldn't know how to live with it.
Yeah. I get that. Yeah, that's a great point. So let me ask you, because I like to ask people this because, our listeners are obviously in different stages of recovery, and we certainly have some people that are newer to recovery or maybe just kind of, sober curious, so to speak, thinking about it, been doing a little research like I was doing back in the day before I actually got sober. But I think this is something that can help everyone. What was the biggest thing that you struggled with early on in recovery, would you say? What was like the toughest part for you, do you think?
Um, I think it was continually learning how to love myself.
Hmm.
Um, and that comes with recovery because you start to really see those character defects and those things that make you really not love yourself. But I don't think I could pinpoint one thing exactly. Uh, Besides me, what I had mentioned about just coming out into the real world, I was very careful about who I put myself around.
Okay.
Uh, I was very careful about who I put myself around, and I was very careful about, and I can't express this enough, and maybe this is the one, man, because it's really hitting home with me right now is idle time.
Mm.
Idle time, man. You know, if I'm not, and it still kind of goes on to this day, it's kind of part of my life.
Sure.
If I stop and I'm not doing something productive or something positive, um, then there can be trouble for Hick, right?
Yeah.
Uh, you know, I don't I don't like my mind to stop and linger too much in kind of like what's going on in the world right now. Man, it's
Hmm.
real rough for us people in recovery right now, and I think for just everyone in general, people with mental health issues, and we are not receiving the proper, or should I say, the normal to us support that we've normally had with people being separated, and we still have this communication like you and I are doing, but I would think idle time. If you're new to sobriety, um, and you feeling weird, man, call someone,
Hmm.
or make a meeting, or So I think for me it was just. Yeah, I'm glad we kind of got to that because maybe I think that's what it was.
Yeah.
Just idle time.
Sure. No, I can definitely relate to that. I think, that's one of the main reasons that I know up until this day, like I have to have a routine. And really, and successful people like have routines, right? But for me, what I think it was is like, okay, I've got to have kind of a framework so that like I'm in the right headspace, just to maintain my sobriety for the day. That I'm doing what I need to do for work with my family, recovery wise. But I really need a game plan for the day. And if I don't have that, then I'm likely to have that idle time. I saw that right off the bat, and it's funny because for someone that hated having structure in my
Yeah,
life, I've really come to like I've seen more and more that like I need it. And honestly, man, I think that the addicts really, and I don't want to speak for everyone, but from what I've seen, like we really kind of thrive when we have that structure. Like I think we kind of buck it initially, but when we're looking at it and we see it from like the right perspective, and we say like, wow, this can really, make my life better and keep me sober. It's like, okay, well, that's something I can get into. The idle time, that's a really great one. That's something that hasn't been mentioned on the show before, and I appreciate you bringing that up. Now, I want to move along here. I've got a little beard envy here, man, because that is just a glorious beard you got going there. And so I know that you've mentioned like there's a backstory with the beard, and it has some relation to your recovery, right? So tell us about that.
yeah. So being like we are, we weren't really good at taking care of ourselves, much less anything
Sure.
else. Yeah, and it was recommended to me. 'Cause I was trying to figure out like when I first got sober, I'm like, what am I gonna do? And this happened actually in treatment.
Okay.
Uh, I'm like, like I don't know what I'm. You start to worry about what you're gonna do when you get out, and how you can
Right.
build structure and how you can, you know, nurture something because we have to practice not only nurturing ourselves, but we have to practice nurturing others. And it
Mm.
usually comes naturally when we are nurturing ourselves. But somebody mentioned about growing a plant, right?
Okay. Yeah.
And I'm like, I used to be really big into basement grows and stuff when I lived in the mountains. Like, I really don't want to take that route right now.
Yeah. I know. I see what you're saying. It might not be the best fit for someone.
Yeah.
Like
So
you.
now now I want to grow a garden. I'm getting old and I'm like, I want to grow. Man, imagine what I did with this weed, man. I could do some amazing things with produce,
Yeah.
So I was like, I'm gonna grow my beard out, right? And I kind of thought, and people were like, oh, you're not gonna keep that thing, and it was horrible. That thing it was a freaking wire brush. It was so horrible and patchy, and honestly, man, my beard has taught me a lot. I started to grow it, and people were, and it was kind of like my sobriety. My friends like, oh man, you're never gonna, man, Hick ain't gonna ever change, or he ain't gonna ever do this. And people were with me on the beard, like, man, you need to cut that thing off. The thing's nasty. It's look how patchy it is. It looks like you got the mange in it. I'd hear all kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
But I stayed strong with it, just like I did with my sobriety. And it kind of reminds me of a bonsai tree. It takes a lot of patience and love, and those are all things that this beard took. What I did not know about my beard was where it would take me. My beard has taken me to some interesting places, and as it allowed me to do some really great things for less fortunate people. So the beard came from sobriety, and now everything that's coming in my life is coming from sobriety and the beard. It's like they kind of like won with me. And it's as funny because as I feel like I grow in my sobriety, it's damn thing gets grayer, right? So there's definitely some kind
of
wisdom,
man. It's wisdom,
right? It's definitely some kind of universal connection with the beard and my sobriety. But it's taken me to some amazing places, and I'm in this really cool beard club, Bearded Villains, which is a big brotherhood, and it's huge. It's close to like 5,000 sub members. We have like close to 200 chapters around the world.
Wow.
We are brotherhood and support system of every nationality, sexuality, religion. None of that matters with us. We all there for one common goal, to support each other. And we also do charity work, and my beard has taken me to some really cool charity events in Puerto Rico, Miami, Los Angeles, to do these big beard competitions. And it's been a freaking awesome ride, man. So the beard is with me, and then the beard led me to other things. So I don't know if I'll ever shave it, honestly. I've been asked to shave it for things now that I'm doing in my life, and I don't know, it's part of me, man. And at first the wife didn't like it.
Like, yeah, I was kind of wondering about that.
Yeah, until we started like flying to Miami and Puerto Rico and stuff, and Los Angeles, and it's just like, oh, what the beard. And one day beard
can stick around.
Yeah, one day I was at her place of work, and this guy was like, you need to shave that thing off. And she turns to him and she's like, you know where that thing is taking us? And he kind of looked at her like, what are you talking about? But
that's funny. Well, and I'm sure, speaking of the beard leading to other things, I'm guessing that some of the parts that you've been cast in, they see the beard and they're like, okay, that's a good fit. So I want to ask about the acting. Like, how did you get into acting?
So when I turned 40 years old, we were sitting here at the house one night and on the couch, and my wife turns to me out of the blue, and she never really asks me questions like this, but she just out of the blue asked me, she says, "Is anything you ever want to do?" Because at this point I had done so much with charity and Bearded Villains, and not only that, but with the community and help. She's seen how many people I help, how much time I spent on the phone, and she's seen that I became a very selfless person. I wasn't really doing anything for me at that time. And she just turned to me. She says, anything you ever want to do for you that you think drugs and alcohol had stopped you from doing. And as a kid and my whole life, and it was something I never talked about, I always wanted to be an actor. And, without one hesitation, she said, well, go for it. And not long after that, I had a friend in makeup, and it was this little independent film going on, and she's like, hey, we need a background guy, a homeless guy. And I'm like, sweet. I was homeless. I've been homeless. Like, I can do this.
Yeah. I know the role. I can play the role well.
Yeah. So while doing that, and I had no idea about the film industry or how to get into acting. We were on set, and the director of photography said I looked real good on film, and he's filming me, and I'm kind of weirded out because this guy just filming me and saying how good I look on film, and it was kind of new and weird to me, and I didn't believe him at first. And he's like, yeah, you can get some background roles and stuff in big productions that are going on. I'm like, oh, cool. Let me try it out. He's like, yeah, here's the site. So I went and I tried it out, and I'd get emails and these availability requests to do this and that, and I would just kind of push it to the side for like 3-4 months. And one day I took the leap, and I submitted for something, and I got a call driving home from work. I pulled over, and it was like this New Orleans number, and I thought it was like an oil field number. And I'm like, my nickname is Skip, so I answered the phone like, this is Skip, with my company name. And they were like, we're looking for Hick Cheramie. And I kind of got scared because like just the government and the police know me as Hick,
Okay. Yeah, right.
Like, something's coming back, man. Like, something's coming back to get me. And she's like, no, this is so-and-so with so-and-so casting, and we like the cast. And so I went ahead and I did it. I went for the fitting, and small prisoner part in a CBS TV show. And from then on, things kind of just rolled in. It was like a little bit more background work, a little bit more, and then featured roles started coming my way. Us getting picked for featured, but I never acted. I looked great, right?
Okay.
Well, they said I looked great. I'm not saying
right.
But I didn't know anything about acting. So while I was on the set last year of this movie that's about to come out in August, I ran into someone who suggested, they were like, look, I think you really need to. And at this point, I had been on, multiple TV shows and movies doing featured work or background work or standing in for the actor. And I had a featured recurring role in this movie for like 14 days. And finally someone's like, I really think you should study the art and the craft of acting. And it was something that I wanted to do, and try to hone that craft. So I did. I came home and put the plan out, and I was supported. I started studying, and I still got plenty of studying to do. I still keep booking things, but I still feel like I can always be better at what I'm doing. And I think that'll be like that with my sobriety and acting and anything else I do until the day that I take my last breath.
Sure.
So I studied and learned some cool things, and I got booked for my first major supporting role last year in a movie called Obsidian that's coming out. It was a wonderful experience. I got to work with Tom Proctor from Guardians of the Galaxy and Lawless and Westworld, and he actually flew from LA to do a scene with me, and I was nervous as shit. And it was a scene where I'm getting tortured, and he wrote me a really kind response and said it was like working with Tom Hardy, and that my work ethic was amazing. And so he kind of blew up my head a little bit with that. I finished that awesome project, and then I got booked for an Amazon series called Final Call. That'll be starting to film. COVID kind of slowed us down on that.
Okay.
I'm in some independent film projects, but I have Money Plane that's coming out in 2 days with Kelsey Grammer and Denise Richards and a lot of a very talented cast. Mr. Andrew Lawrence, Joey Lawrence's brother, directed that, and he was absolutely amazing. And I got a cool little part in that movie that comes out in 2 days on demand and digital. And he was, when a director writes you and tells you that, you give us a look that's to be remembered in a scene. And that was his exact words when he wrote me. That's awesome. Feels good, man. It's almost like I'll never compare it to a high, because that was a shitty feeling, but it's a feeling of worth that the hard work you put in is being seen and being recognized. So yeah, I have probably the biggest one that I have a feature recurring is coming out in August. That's Antebellum, and that's a Bush Rents directors, the team directors. brilliant directors, and that'll be out in August 21st, I believe. I'll have to look that up. It kind of got pushed back in theaters because of COVID.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've been real busy, kind of waiting for this thing to pass over, to continue in some projects that I am lined up for, and not every day I wake up and feel like I deserve like this life I have, because of all the bad shit I did.
Yeah.
But I think that my walk every day is a tribute to the blessings that I receive. I'd like to think they are. So yeah, man, I have, to think about that. 7 years ago, I was at the bottom of a vodka bottle, and to be able to work with, this is also have coming up, and one of my mentors and someone I look up to be able to work with Brian Cranston, that I was so fortunate to conversate with him and work with him, and I'm nobody big by far, but that day on set, my character was somebody who engaged with him, and it was just me, him, and another actor in a whole scene for 8-9 hours of filming, and
wow,
it was, to think back of where I was, and it was, God, I wish I could tell the story, but I'm under non-disclosure for this Showtime series with him. There's a really cool story about sobriety and my alcoholism, and what I was playing, but I really can't. I want to, but as soon as it comes out, I'm gonna email you and definitely hit you up.
Yeah, no, man, for sure. And I love him. I mean, and for those who don't know, that's Walt in Breaking Bad, right? And man, I loved him in Breaking Bad. I actually loved Malcolm in the Middle too. I thought that was a really good show, actually.
He's more like the dad from Malcolm in the. He's a really down to earth, charismatic.
I can see that.
He's such, and it's funny, man, because he's just this fun loving, friendly guy, and when that camera starts rolling, he is just fucking brilliant. I mean,
that's
just
awesome.
And it like I'm trying to do this scene, and he I just want to watch him, but I can't because I'm supposed to be being something
right.
else.
Yeah, you've got to be doing some acting too.
And it's like I just wanted to watch him, but
wow.
I've been lucky. And people say, "Oh, well, luck." And no, the harder you work, the fucking luckier you get.
For sure.
And so I've been lucky, man.
Yeah, you create the luck to a very large degree. I think I can agree with that, man. It sounds like you've had some incredible opportunities. Now, I want to ask, and I think you touched on this a little bit, but give us an idea of what your recovery looks like today, and what you continue to do to grow in your sobriety.
So today, my recovery is me not only loving myself, but practicing and being a practitioner of love and compassion towards others, because it helps me stay out of myself. I will stop whatever I'm doing if somebody rings that phone or sends a message, and they, so I think recovery for me today is constantly trying to the best of my ability to stay out of myself. Any way that I possibly could, whatever avenue, if it whether it be charity work or if it's, helping just whatever I can do to stay out of self. And what was that a part of your question?
Yeah. So just what you're doing to maintain and grow in your recovery.
That's a lot of correspondence, actually.
Okay.
A lot of people come to me and with their issues and with their problems, and I steer them where they if they want it, I steer them where they want. But service work, man, service work to another alcoholic and addict. You know, that's where my recovery is. You know, there was a time, there was a space where last year I was working a lot because it's really hard to balance film industry, oil field, family, you know, and any other thing that I was into. And I got caught up with constantly being busy. And I kind of backed away from answering those messages and taking those phone calls, or, you know, I'll have people come to my house that just need to talk, or that is trying to see what sobriety is, or what, you know, and I had stepped away because, man, I'm far from fucking perfect, you know, like every day this thing is work, and I won't ever have this until like I'm literally dying is when I'll say I got this sobriety thing, right? And I kind of stopped the service work a little bit, and it showed, man. It showed in my attitude. It showed in the way I was affectionate towards others. It showed it, you know. So, I mean, my suggestion, and this is for me, is the service work. You know, it may not be in an AA meeting. It may not be at a sober convention. But what I do on a day-to-day basis, as far as talking to people one-on-one, that's steady. That doesn't stop, and it stopped a little while last year because I was like, you know what, like I'm really busy. I think I can. There's other people that these people can go to, and, you know, I kind of got selfish with it, you know, and I was like, I'm just busy, and it's bullshit. I'm not too busy, you know. People had time for me, man.
Yeah.
You know, people had time for me. People showed me patience, tolerance, and pity. And it wasn't for a very long time. It was maybe a couple months that I was just not answering messages, and I was focusing on scripts, and I was focused on this, and I was focused on that, and not focusing on what I needed to focus on. You know, so no matter how far we get in this thing, we have to remember what works, right? We have to remember what works for us. And it showed, you know, it showed the negligence that I was having towards my household, and negligence towards friends and family. You know, you got to be careful not to get caught up, or I had to be careful not to get caught up in all this shit that's happening, right? So, you know, I make sure that people know I'm very approachable at any time.
Yeah.
And people know they can call me at any time. My wife will testify to that I will stop what I'm doing and sit someone in my living room. You know, I kind of got to know them, not just a stranger, but
right.
You know, and stop what I'm doing. So service work would be the main thing for me. That's how I keep my recovery going. I remember where the fuck I come from.
Yeah, I love that.
And those people that are sick, like I once was, reminds me where I come from. And at the end of the day, man, they have no idea how much they helped me, and I let them know. They're like, man, thank you so much. Like, you know, I started looking at things differently, and now I'm going to meetings, and now, or I'm doing this, or, you know, whatever their form of if it works for them, man, bless them.
For sure.
I'm not going to sit there and say, this is what you have to do, or this is what you, but I will say, I will make suggestions.
Sure.
You know, I will make suggestions, and at the end of the day, it's what keeps me sober. You know, we can never forget where we come from, ever. Yeah. You know, and I made that decision. It's kind of hard, man. Where I live in Cajun country, they had some old school AA guys. And when I got out of treatment, I made a decision to never be quiet about my story. I made a decision to be an open book. I made a decision not to hide it from certain people. I made a decision for people to know who I am and where I come from. And they will always know who I am and where I come from. Yeah. You know, I may be this person now, but I never forget I was that junkie, and I never forget I was that alcoholic, you know, and it's, people showed me a lot of patience, tolerance, and pity, man. A lot.
Oh, man.
I'll never forget that. I'll never forget that. You know, they made time for me when I was all fucked up. They made time for me, and now I see in my life how valuable time is. It's so valuable. It's everything.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so, and I think you've shared a couple things here, but before we wrap up here, Hick, if there's one piece of advice that you could share with the sober nation, what's one piece of advice that you would share?
I think the one piece of advice that I would share is that no matter, sorry, no matter how far you are and how hopeless and broken you feel, that you are of worth and value. Hmm. And that's so important to me is showing people they are of worth and value. And telling them that, letting them hear you, tell you, you are worth and value, because I know you can relate, and Asher and Elle can relate. There was plenty times where we feel like we had no worth or value to this world or anyone around us. So I'm a big stickler for showing people and telling people their worth and value. So for anyone listening who may be listening and you think that you are hopeless and broken, you are not hopeless and broken. You are here, you are breathing, and you still have the choice of free will. And I promise you, it's never ever too late. It's never too late. Love yourself enough not to drink or do drugs. And I promise you, if you live like that, everything that you've ever needed in your life, you'll have.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome advice. You're giving me chills over here, man. And, I've got to connect the dots for myself. And I think for the listeners too, you've just described how you have this awesome life now, and all these great things are happening for you. And you have this moment, when you get your first trailer, your own trailer in a movie, and you're sitting there and you're like, man, I'm not supposed to be here. I think I need to connect the dots between you doing so much for others and then awesome things happening in your life like that, because I think that's one of the coolest things about all of this. It's like, the more that I get out of myself, and I don't know how this works, call it karma or whatever you want. I don't think I really need to fully understand it, but I know that, like with you, the more I get out of myself and do things for others and put others first, the better my life gets. And I think that's what like the story that you've just told about your life is exactly how I understand it. I think that's so awesome, man. So I really appreciate you coming on the show. You can learn more about Hick and connect with him on Instagram at Hick Cheramie _actor. Thanks again for coming on the show, Hick.
Thanks for having me, man. I'm humbled and honored, and I appreciate you and your time.
Be sure to check out the show notes for all the info from today's episode. Sober Nation FM is brought to you by Sobriety Engine. Sobriety Engine is a free online community of men and women supporting each other in their recovery. Visit sobrietyengine.com to join today. This show is also brought to you by Recover Health. If you're ready to get fit and start living a healthier lifestyle while supporting your sobriety, you can learn more about having me as your own personal fitness and nutrition coach at rcvrhealth.com. And again, whether you're listening to the show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or watching on YouTube, please share this with your friends, follow, subscribe, and leave us a review. Nation, thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.